I am Pokalainui, and I will be your host for the next 2 hours on this radio program. And the name of the program is Hawaiian Potpourri. If you're not familiar with the program, and if this is the first time you're listening to the program, the basic structure of the program is I make some comments, some gentle comments, and give you an opportunity to respond to them. And we do have a program that goes from 4 to 6 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and generally we follow up with this program on Sunday mornings. The programs are not necessarily the same. They are, in fact, both live shows. If you're listening to me on Sunday morning on the 8th of April, then this is indeed a live program. If for some reason you are hearing this program on a different date, then it is pre-recorded, of course, and it may be because I'm out of country at the time. I may be traveling, or I will be traveling to America, both for a week this month. Actually, this week, in fact. And in May, I will also be traveling. So in the event I am traveling and I'm not able to make this program, we will be playing one of our earlier programs. So if that is occurring, then it's a pre-recorded program. Okay, with that said, what's going on? What's in the news? I picked up the newspaper this morning, and the only item that really caught my attention was actually on the front page. And it's a discussion of what's happening with Kapiolani Park and the city's determination to build a structure in the park area on the Makai side of what is the main drag there? Not Kuhio. Obviously, I'm what some people would say a country jack, or a kua'aina, living in the countryside, in the Waianae side. And I know the name of that main street in Waikiki, and that's Kalakaua, of course. And it's a Makai side of Kalakaua next to the natatorium. There's a greened area there, and actually it belongs to the Kapiolani Park Trust. And it was a trust created back in 1903, I believe, and it was dedicated for the continual use as a park for the people of Hawaii. As a result of that creation of the park, putting it in trust, in perpetuity, what happens when the city council is made the trustee over this trust? And so they are given certain discretionary rights to the use of the trust. However, the trust can only be used for purposes that, or the park can only be used for purposes contained in the trust. Who enforces the trust? To what extent can a city go beyond the trust terms and use the trust or the property of the trust for other purposes? And that is what the controversy seems to be about. The city wants to build a lifeguard substation on the space, and they are willing to spend up to $500,000 for building that substation. They have spent already almost $100,000, and some people are saying, well, it's too late. We've already expended these funds, and we're just going ahead and proceed with the building of this building. Other people are saying, including the Kapiolani Park Preservation Society, that it's never too late. And even, I guess, and I haven't read them actually saying this, but even after the structure, if the structure is built, even after building it, it can be torn down. And it's just a matter of will and legal requirements. You recall where the Korean Buddhist church up in, was that Pa'oa? Not Pa'oa. Palolo Valley was built, and they built a building a foot too tall, or approximately a foot taller than it was, but it was already built. the court came in and says, well, it's a violation. You don't have a permit for it. The builders or the owners had said, well, I'm sorry, it's already built. And so the court says, well, shave it off. Shave a foot off of the that height. And so they had to do it. I don't know if they actually shaved it or they just removed the steeple or a portion of it so that it conforms. So there's always that ability there. The city is sort of trying to say, well, we're already in the momentum of going ahead and building, and so not the park, but the organization, the Preservation Society, is contemplating bringing the city to court, suing the city for violation of its trust obligations. Now, in this case, the trustees are the city council members, and this is contained in the trust itself. Very curious, and yet not necessarily unusual. Can the trustees, the city council members, say that we actually should be stepping down from this position because we find ourselves in a conflict of interest? Of course, you have to show what that conflict is. And some people will say, well, it's not a conflict. You agreed to take the property for park purposes many years ago, and all we're requiring you to do is abide by the specific terms of the trust under which you assumed responsibility for the trust. It raises some interesting issues there. Some of the history is that the original or the Hahnemann administration, excuse me, the Mufi Hahnemann administration seems to have initiated this move when he was the mayor of the city and county of Honolulu, and paid a planning organization, Nishi and Associates, $91,191 to plan and design the lifeguard substation. This, according to Peter Carlisle's press secretary. So they're essentially saying, well, it was initiated by Mufi, not by the Carlisle administration. Well, how much did the Carlisle administration toss in? $11,731. So it brings it up to about a little over $100,000 in planning, and the total cost is going to be over $500,000. The city is also planning a $3.6 million expansion of its Kapiolani Park nursery. Now, that nursery sounds more legitimate as a park service, but they are finding that the nursery is actually using that nursery building at Kapiolani Park for parking a lot of its large vehicles for servicing parts of Honolulu, and they are saying for that purpose it's an inappropriate purpose. You cannot give a park to a city and the city can use it for any other purpose, such as its police substation, or as a parking lot in which it can locate its vehicles to service other areas. That certainly doesn't appear to be the purpose of the creation of the park. Okay, what else does it say that caught my attention? It raises an issue. It says here that in 1896, on the Act 53 of the Republic of Hawaii, the trust was established. Now, it will be curious to look back at the land title and see where did the Republic of Hawaii get this trust land. After all, we know that it stole or simply proclaimed that it owned all of these lands without appropriate authority to do so. So it may raise some interesting Hawaiian issues of, is this part of the stolen land assets taken by the Republic of Hawaii and then given to the United States in the cession of Hawaii to the United States. So while it is not, quote, ceded lands, it is still part of the trust lands assumed by the Republic of Hawaii, that fake organization appearing or pretending to be legitimate. So it digs a lot into the history of Hawaii. The trust is still in force, and what this Ribman, she's a local attorney who is at the present time the president of the Preservation Society. She says if they were shifted around after the initial contribution into the trust, and then let me read that again. Then they have violated the provisions of the trust. The Preservation Society and other groups have fought attempts to grab trust land for decades, according to Jack Gilmar, an emeritus member of the Society's board. Now, what is the legal claim that this Preservation Society has to this land? Well, it's just a civil society that has expressed itself and dedicated its organization to the preservation of the land. It appears to me, given the name of its organization. It does not prevent others from themselves initiating action to preserve the land, to bring an action against the city council for a violation of the trust. I suspect that many members of the city council will be surprised because they are not even aware that this has been happening. And the council member, Stanley Chang, who represents District 4, that's a Waikiki, Kaimuki, and Hawaii Kai district in which this land falls within, is surprised that these activities are going on and that there is this controversy. He was, shall we say, clueless to these events. And of course, we recognize that he cannot know every single item that's going on within the city, although it is part of his responsibility. But not only his, but all members of the city council, because they are all trustees of the trust. Continuing on, let's see. They say that the trust essentially disappeared and parts of the park were taken to satisfy city and state needs, Gilmar said. President Thomas Jefferson Elementary School and a city fire department station, equipment yard, and a parking lot are previous trust violations. More and more interesting things are coming up. Gold Coast resident rediscovered the trust while trying to halt the then Mayor Frank Fosse's push for park commercialization, Gilmar said. The ensuing battle between the city, the state, and the Preservation Society eventually landed in the Hawaii Supreme Court, which supported the Preservation Society's claim that Kapiolani Park is and will always be governed by the terms of the 1896 Trust, according to Gilmore. So it's you begin with a substation and you raise all of these other issues. When told of the city plans, this woman Havelu said she opposes any development that takes parklands from the people. She is oblivious to the brewing battle. Ashley Havelu, was sprawled out Wednesday on the undeveloped stretch of lawn where the city might build a lifeguard substation. Now, this is the Makai side of the main road, Kalakaua Avenue. And she says, "It's nice and quiet here," said Havelu, who is the president of the Diamond Head Community Garden. It's one of the few places in Waikiki for locals. When told of city plans, Havelu said she opposes any development that takes parkland from the people. How do city workers get such special privileges? If they put them here, where will we go? Very interesting question. So if it's not really the city's land in terms of it being used as without limitations, but in this particular case under a trust limitation, then when people who have been arrested, the homeless who have been arrested at Kapiolani Park, was it and how was a complaint filed? Were they violating the trust provisions, or were they ticketed for violating city property? Was it really city property, or is it only city managed property actually belonging to the trust? Well, some people would say only a lawyer would think about those angles. Well, if I was representing any of those who were cast out or arrested for for being on the city park inappropriately, I would at least look into the terms of the trust to base an argument. Okay, the city has been in partial violation of this order ever since, wrongly using the nursery as a base yard for trucks serving all of East Honolulu, according to Rebman. And further on, decisions should favor the best interests of Hawaii residents, Havelu said. Now, the city may say, well, we represent the city and county of Honolulu, so we speak, we are the voice of the Hawaii residents. Well, that is true to a certain extent, but don't forget that trustees can be sued by beneficiaries for violation of the trust obligation, and that is not unusual. And when trustees say that they speak for the trust and violates the terms of the trust, they can and have been sued. You remember the Department of Hawaiian Homelands and their leasing lands to non-native Hawaiians, to businesses out in the general public. Part of that defense was, well, while we are concerned about our primary beneficiaries, the native Hawaiians, we also are members of the community, and we have to think of the good of the community. And so on that basis, we have justified the leasing of lands to the general community. Then a Hawaiian man from, was it Kamuela? What is his name? He has recently passed on. Kaniho. Yes, Brother Kaniho. Kaniho says, hey, that's not right. We go in and we go sue the trustees of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. So in the case of Kaniho versus Department of Hawaiian Homelands, the Hawaii Supreme Court came back and says, well, while you are trustees of the land, it is your obligation to carry out the trust. The trust says that your obligation is to meet the needs of the beneficiaries, who is the Native Hawaiians as defined by the Congressional Act, and that is 50% of the Hawaiian blood, not to go out and serve the general population. And so while you want to play your politics of, well, we are here, we are a public entity, we should serve the will of the general population, the Supreme Court slapped their hands and said, no, those leases are illegal, pull it back and rededicate the lands to Native Hawaiians. Now, you can have Native Hawaiian businesses, you can have Native Hawaiian other things, but essentially it needs to stay within the trust document, within the reasons why the trust was created. Even when you're dealing with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, when you hear people saying, and members of the Board of Trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, to say that, you know, we need to remember that we are members of the public and we need to serve the members of the general public as well as the Native Hawaiians, that in itself is a violation of trust. And it should be pointed out to the trustees or whoever is making that kind of statement to say, hey, wait a minute, it's a violation of trust. Your singular obligation is to the trust as a trustee. As you act as a trustee, your singular obligation is to serve the Hawaiian people. In this case, it's not limited to only the 50% of the blood quantum, but the general population as well. Okay. So it's quite interesting. Trust law, what are the obligations, whether or not the city and counties should continue to serve as the trustees. In this particular case, their service is to serve an identical population of the city and county of Honolulu. This is what the park is set aside for. So there's no, split in the trust obligations. That does not mean that they're identical, authority is the same. But the identical obligation is the same. However, there is a split in authority. As council members, they can decide to put buildings here and buildings there. But as trustees, they cannot violate the terms of the trust. So as council members, using that council member hat, they cannot say, yes, we're going to toss a building on trust lands, because that will be a violation. To that extent, they can have their hands slapped, and it seems that this is one of the possibilities for that. The other side is, as an example, the homeless people, if they find that, I was arrested there and they said I was on city property, it's not really city property in terms of it being trust property in which the city council members are acting as trustee. So you can raise that as a jurisdictional question in court. You can say it was a violation of your right as a member of the city and county of Honolulu to access this trust land. Although it's a public trust, it still is a trust land. Okay, enough of that. My camera producer, Don Hutton, is telling me to take a short break, and we will, with some music, and then we'll be back right.
Kaulana na pua o Hawaii, Kupa ama hope o ka aina, Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino, Pala pala anunu me ka paka. Mane mai Hawaii moku o ke ave, Koku ana honoa o Pilani, Ka ko'o mai kaua I o mano, Pa'aku me ke one o ka kuhi hewa. Aolea e kau I ka pulima, Maluna o ka pepa o ka enemi, Po'ohui ai nā ku ai hewa, I ka pono sivila a o ke kanaka.